Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review Dexter New Blood, Episode 6. So, now going into this episode, it seems that it's very dialogue heavy in this episode, but it seems that there is some certain payouts in this episode, but still, it just, to me, I was like, man, I'm kind of getting tired of them having to seemingly review something and now it feels like they're re-reviewing it, and I'm like, man, this show is wasting some time. This show is wasting. I'm like, there feels like for me for this show, like I would probably want to pick and choose episodes if I were to ever to rewatch this again. I don't think I want to watch it all the way through. Like I feel like there's some episodes where it's like I'd rather watch than others. But like as a season as a whole, like I just don't feel like we're 100% like all the way like yeah, every bit of this is just so like yeah. Every episode is like yeah, like how I used to feel before when I would watch so many Dexter episodes through numerous seasons and like had that really good feeling up until a certain season where I'm just like, okay, like not really all that interested anymore. And so like it kind of feels like we're kind of hit and missing here. Like we're just coming into this episode just because of a payout at some point of it, but like this episode is to like not really go anywhere. It's to really go nowhere, and it just feels pointless to really go in and just review this out. So, but going on in this episode, we of course have at the tail end of the last episode is to be a thing that they get to in this episode. And also there is to be something going on with both Kurt and Harrison. I can't quite. It seems like we can't quite put our finger on it yet, but like I don't know what exactly Kurt is doing because it seems like he had, of course, lost his son and now gained a Harrison. So it seems to the point even to where Dexter is kind of just getting really upset with Kurt, but how like Kurt is just kind of smothering Harrison to the point where like towards the end of this episode it gets really interesting. So so yeah, I think that's all that I can possibly go in and say here for the cryptic. We might also, like, I can say that Dexter is to be spending some time with Molly to kind of figure her out. But it seems like we're going through more of memory lane or like a kind of delay on Dexter's part than anything else of really much more getting to know this Molly character. And so, and we also have that kind of frisbee moment kind of going on in this episode also. And like the frisbee episode, like that is to be called, I think, Gator. And so like we'll eventually get into what I mean by that. So yeah, like I think that's all that I have to say about this one. Just kind of a dialogue heavy and a go nowhere episode. So let's go into this episode about tuna sandwiches. Weirdly, where Dexter does say like, "Yeah, I think I've been eating too many tuna fish sandwiches. Maybe I should go and transition to a different sandwich because, like, I heard it's healthier for me." And then like we also have Dexter that's like, "Yeah, I think I'm getting a little rusty. Like, I don't." Like I think that my kind of radar on things is kind of off, probably because I've been eating too many tuna fish sandwiches. Really just saying that like since Dexter hasn't been in the game in far too long, he like his senses are all out of whack about certain people. So, but yeah, so that's kind of like the tail end of something that I can go on and say here about that whole tuna sandwich thing. So let's go into it. Let's go into that double five. Let's otherwise go into this thing called the spoiler time. Spoiler time, spoiler time. It's about the time I'm going to spoil this episode. So, as per usual, when dialogue is to become a flying, I'm immediately just like, oh my god, not one of these. Not one of these. Like, that's my usual, like, kryptonite, unless I've seen, like, a movie a million times and then dialogue becomes, like, easy, like it's flowing on butter. But, so, let's get into this episode. So, we end up having, of course, Harrison going and doing certain chores. Going and uh, taking some snow off of Dexter's truck. And so Dexter's like, hey, like, Harrison, he's doing chores. Like, that's nice. And so Deb is immediately whiff it out that it seems since, like, they've kind of been on like odds of one another, both Dexter and Harrison. Harrison is wanting to go and try to do a good deed to get on Dexter's good side. So Dexter is to come and look at, of course, Harrison's backpack to find there is uh, a form for Harrison to be working with Kurt. And Dexter's like, I don't know about that Kurt guy. Like, I don't know. There's something that I haven't really put my finger on him yet. And, like, I don't think Harrison should go and work with that guy because I don't know what's really going on there. So, Harrison is to go inside, and so we, of course, have Dexter confronting Harrison about this piece of paper because it was sticking out of his backpack. I'm like, man, like, Harrison, like, we have it to where Dexter is always to, like, is to, like, always be in, like, trouble or something with Harrison, where it's like, I'm assuming Harrison just wants to freaking just get out of here. Like, what is the point of, like, having Harrison here where he always has to be, like, investigated or fine-tooth combed through? And it feels like that's what's going on. So Harrison is just like, well, hey, like, I didn't go to the therapist yesterday. I went and saw Kurt, and we had a really good, he gave me some really good advice, and then he offered me a job. And so, hey, if you can go and sign this paper and have me go and work with him, then I'll go and do so. And Dexter's like, well, no. Like, can't you go and do chores here and I'll give you money? Or can't you go and work where I work? And Dexter's like, or Harrison's like, no, I'm not going to do that. Because he wants his independence. He wants to eventually be at this spot away from his dad. So Dexter isn't going to sign that paperwork. And so later on, we have Harrison going to Kurt and giving him this paper. And Kurt is like, well, hey, your dad didn't sign. And Harrison's just like, well, yeah, he didn't. And so Kurt is like, well, does he know that you're working here? And Harrison is like, well, yeah. And Kurt's like, good enough. Like, what's his name? I'll sign it for him. I don't care. Like, you're working with me. Like, it's fine. Like, you can go and, like, do this job. So Harrison leaves, and so all of a sudden there's this girl named Winnie who comes over to be another beggar for Kurt, and Kurt's like thinking of like, yeah, I want you to come to me so I can have you be another of my runaways. So Kurt is to go and give this one fistfuls of money, just like, here you go, here's all this big fat cash. Can you take all of it? Yeah. And so we have Kurt is like, well, hey, do you need anything else? Do you need, like, is there anything else I can help you with? And, like, is there a place that I can have you live and die horribly, murderously, just in the shower, you know what I mean? And so when he's like, "Yeah, I'd love to, but hey, like my boyfriend can go with if that's all right." And so all of a sudden, when his boyfriend is saying like, "Well, hey, like we have a ride down in Indianapolis, so like we're gonna get out of here." And when he's like, "Oh, hey, thanks for the money, we're gonna leave now," and Kurt's like, "Oh wait, he's the guy that shoots people. Oh, I forgot." It still bugs me. It does. So we can't have a guy that like is the savor, the flavor of a kill. At least somebody needs a kill in the show. We need somebody to start killing because, good God, like we haven't had enough of it in the show. I remember in the good old days when like people would be almost killed every episode. Now it's like every whenever. Every out of what, 6 episodes, 2 people have been dead. Uh, anyways, well, unless you count like somebody in this episode, so to speak. Well, technically, if you count the 2 girls, technically that's 4 people. Technically, 4 or 5. Oh, almost like one. Anyways, so I don't count the Kurt kills. I really don't. But they're not killing enough, sadly. They're not killing enough in this show. Anyways, they're not. But anyways, pushing on. So we have, of course, Molly and Angela kind of talking things out. After, of course, Angela is to pull Dexter over and pull him over to just be like, hey, license and registration. And so Dexter's getting his license and registration, and Angela's like, no, like I want the license and registration of this man. Yeah, you're Dexter Morgan. And so Angela is going and having Dexter like go into the office for them to talk about this. And so immediately we have Essler and we have Logan, who's like, oh my god, like, hey man, do you need a breakup track? Do you need some breakup volume thing going on here? Like Esther is like, oh my god, whatever you did. So Dexter goes in there. Angela just like shuts down her shades so that way no one can see what's going on in there. And so Dexter goes on and is to talk to Angela. And so it's like, well, hey, like, who is this man? Like, who are you even? Are you Jim? Are you Dexter? Who are you? We could have easily had really just Dexter at this point just saying, like, oh, I had a twin brother. Did you not know? His name was Dexter. My name was Jim. No, that wouldn't have worked out really well. So, but yeah, so Dexter is telling technically the truth, like a kind of a kernel of truth here. So Dexter is to go on and say that where he was from before, his wife had been murdered, and then his sister, and then there was so much death that Dexter couldn't imagine going back in to homicide and working anymore. So he decided to go off and like leave his past behind and go onto a boat and just keep on going in one direction. And that just landed him here. Because Dexter was going to go into a hurricane to risk his life and he didn't die. So he just decided to just come here. So Angela's like, well, you've lied to me. Like every single time I've called you Jim, like you've lied to me. And so now I don't want any more time with Jim. Like I know. Like so we have Angela that's to say like you need to go to therapy. Because like Harrison, like, because because Angela's like, well, what about your son? And so Dexter's like, oh, well, my son's going to therapy. And really, Angela's like, well, so should you. Like, that's like something wrong there. Like, there's something really wrong there. So now we have, of course, Dexter leaving. And so Dexter's like, well, hey, you going to keep my secret? And Angela's like, just leave. Like, just leave. So later on, we eventually have Dexter going and talking to Logan and like talking things out. Because it seems that Dexter's a call Logan like, hey man, like in your past relationships, how have things like worked out? And Logan had mentioned that he eventually had to use his breakup track with some girl. He's like, so we uh so we have Molly coming in to talk to Angela, and Molly's like, well, hey, what was that all about? And Angela's like, nah. So Molly's going on, and she's like, you know what? Like, I think I know what happened now. I think there has to be something going on with Kurt. Like, I feel like he's lying about a lot of things, and there's some kind of suspicion there. Maybe he had gone off and taken Matt's body somewhere and killed him himself to kind of deal with this problem. And so they're kind of backtracking and thinking where Kurt in this whole thing, where Kurt was trying to avoid them going. And one spot was to eventually have been this cave. And so Angela's like, like, yeah. Because eventually Angela and Logan are kind of putting their heads together because Angela is kind of thinking like Molly. And so she's thinking like, like, yeah, there's got to be something. There's got to be something with this Kurt guy. So now Angela is to go and ask Logan, like, well, hey, can I have you come with me to this cave? And Logan's like, yeah, no, like we have a wrestling meet, a wrestling match, wrestling something, and amateur, and so Logan or Angela's like, oh yeah, right. So you go on and you do that. I'll go and I'll get the other guy, Reed. Uh, I'll get him. Or no, wait, it's Teddy. Teddy, yeah. I'll get Teddy to help me out. We so we go on and we have Dexter. Let's go and talk about Harrison. So Harrison is going on into school, and so Zach is like, "Hey, it's good to have you back. It's a good thing that you didn't die at that party." So Harrison's in school, and all of a sudden he bumps into Audrey, and so Audrey's like, "Hey, are you grounded for like a million years?" And Harrison's like, "No." And so Harrison is mentioning that he's going and seeking out therapy, and so like he's like Harrison is telling Audrey the truth. Maybe he's being a little bit too truthful, I think, in this episode. But so we have Audrey who's saying it's like, well, hey, like, how about you and me, since you're not grounded? How about you and me just kind of like relax, like kind of like just take it easy, no death list parties, and how about you and me just hang out and like, considering we have to study for that Chem test, like how about we go and do that? And Harrison's like, oh, okay, that sounds great. But then all of a sudden he ends up getting a text realizing that he is to go to therapy with his dad. So we have, of course, Harrison saying that, like, yeah, like I think we're gonna have to rain check that whole me hanging out thing because I have something to do. So uh, so we eventually have Harrison who goes to therapy with his dad, and so we get this spot where Harrison is to go on like first and talk about like his past, and I'm like, this is basically review. And then like the key thing that Morris Cooper, who is to be this therapist, to kind of pull out here, is like, well, it seems like there is some abandonment there. It seems that like the story that you're presenting is a story of about abandonment. And then all of a sudden, now Morris is to go on and say like, well, hey, Dexter, tell me your life story, as if no one else has ever been on this show and whatever have seen a lick of any of this thing beforehand. And so Dexter goes and tells his whole life story. And like Deb is telling Dexter, yeah, you probably want to leave out you being a killer, a killer and a murderer and whatever. So Dexter barely says anything. Like he doesn't talk about any of his emotions. He just kind of rattles off stuff that has happened in his past, even so much so of like saying that really Dexter and Rita's marriage just fell apart. And Harrison's like, fell apart? Like, my mom died horrifically. And Dexter's like, well, like, do you remember any bit of that? Like, do you remember your mother dead? Like, do you remember anything? And Harrison is just like, no, but like I like heard the numerous stories afterwards. Like I heard everything afterward. Like he ended up listening. Like Harrison listened to that podcast and then after murdered Ethan, just brutally, killed somebody. So maybe that whole podcast just re-triggered something in Harrison's brain that maybe he does remember, and maybe he's lying to his father about it. Maybe Harrison soon is going to be a murderer. I don't know. So Dexter is eventually going on about his life and how he was like adopted because his biological parents had a like basically uh, they weren't in the picture, and so Morris right then and there is like, oh my god, like you have a story about being abandoned, and so does your son. Like it seems that Harrison has like inherited these abandonment issues, and so I guess like when like instead of having Dex uh, face this and realize that his original parents weren't there for him, he left too, creating this abandonment issue for his son. So we end up having, of course, Morris asking like Dexter, it's like, well, hey, like go in more about this, like talk like more about your past. And so Dexter's to say it's like, well, yeah, like I had my mom die at a young age, but like uh my adopted mother died at a young age, or my young age. And so but Harry ended up taking me in. And so but eventually, Morrison is eventually asked about Dexter going on and like leaving. Like, how did he feel about that? And Dexter's like, well, like I've moved on from it. And Harrison is just like, wow, like you moved on. Like, why am I even here if you like feel fine about it and you've moved on? And so now Morris is like, well, hey, wait a minute. Like, Harrison, how do you feel about this? And so Harrison feels abandoned. And like the doctor is just like, well, yeah, like I know, like we've already talked about that. And like Harrison is like, no, like right here in this chair, I now feel abandoned. That like we have like Harrison kind of expressing things, and like Dexter just kind of like really just walling himself up and not really saying anything. But also it feels that Dexter felt nothing about pulling the ripcord on his life. Like he's not like really reflecting on it, even though there's some parts where in certain episodes he did say it's like, well, like what if I would have done things differently? Like what if I would have gone back and taken Harrison with me before I left? Like completely just didn't pull the ripcord on my life and taken Harrison with me. Like how different would things would have been? But didn't quite happen that way. So Harrison ends up going on and or no, Morris is to go and talk with Dexter and say like, you know what, like I need more from you. Like I need more like than what you're giving me. So like we just have Dexter who's just like, there's nothing I can kind of give because Dexter doesn't have much. Dexter's an emotionless person still. He's faking that he's not, but like he technically still is. And this is to obviously just showcase this, where Dexter doesn't know how to like handle a son, and it's becoming obvious now to where even like Kurt is kind of stepping in to like pitch hit for Dexter being a dad. Because Kurt, when Harrison was to go and give him this paperwork, Kurt is like, well, hey, like, can you work tonight? And Harrison is just like, well, I got this wrestling match. He's like, hey, that's great. Like, hey, I'm gonna go there. I'll be like ringside or whatever. Like, I'll be like basically right by the coach because I technically put so much money into this freaking school. Like, I should basically be like have my own private seat. Freaking weirdly. So so Harrison is to after this whole therapy session, we have Harrison kind of sneaking off to eventually go and speak to Audrey. And so Audrey is seeing that Harrison is sneaking into her house, and Audrey's like, you know, my mother is a sheriff, right? As these like nunchucks, thinking someone's gonna break in, and it's Harrison, and so Harrison's like, hey, you know how to do nunchucks? And the girl's like, yeah, I watch Bruce Lee movies. So, okay, sure. Clock me one, whatever. So Harrison and Andre are sitting down, and so Harrison couldn't sleep, so he decided to come over there. And so Harrison is talking to Audrey, and he's like, well, yeah, like I talked to my like dad in this therapy session, and like it just got me so angry. Just kind of remembering about the past, it just got me so angry. And so it seems that Harrison is to bring up some things of his past where he probably did kill somebody, but like Audrey kind of swerves it as like, well, because like Ethan, like she says, Ethan, it's like, well, you defended yourself, and Harrison is like, well, there was this one guy who, like, when I was in this bus station, he tried to try to touch me once, and so she's like, well, yeah, I would have cocked him anyway, like, freaking knocked him out, and like so. And so Harrison is just like, well, yeah, but I have so much of this anger, and I just want to hurt everybody, like seemingly everybody. And so eventually, what transpires here is all of a sudden we eventually have Audrey and Harrison kissing and then kind of going under the sheets to all of a sudden have Angela going and waking up Audrey the next day to find Harrison and Audrey in bed together. She's like, "Oh my god!" So Angela ends up taking Harrison to Dexter's house, and she's like, "You deal with your son." And so we of course have Dexter going on and saying to Harrison, it's like, well, hey, like, where were you? And Harrison's like, well, yeah, I snuck out to her house. I snuck out to Audrey's house. And, like, did you even notice? Did you even notice I was gone? And Dexter's like, well, what? Like, do you expect me to just be, like, right outside your door, just lurking in the shadows, like, waiting, waiting for any moment that you might just, like, need something? Like, you're a teenage kid. Like, what do you want me to do? Should I have a cot right next to your door just in case? Just should I just like jump out of the shadows and be like, booga? What should I do? What should I do? Cause Dexter doesn't give a Dexter doesn't care. Dexter's not really being a father here. Cause he's just like, meh, like I don't really know if I am a father to Harrison still. Like I've been on my own for so long that I'm just so used to it, I guess. So Harrison goes off, and Deb and Dex are just like Dex is like telling Deb, it's like, well, what should I say to him? And Deb's like, well, if you don't know, I am not gonna know. And so they kind of end up saying, it's like, well, the big thing about this is I don't have to go and tell him the sex talk. It's like, but yeah, that's the one big plus. Like maybe he learned in some like foster home somewhere about the birds and the bees. I don't know. But yeah, so like that's the kind of the weird takeaway from that is just like, well, hey, like I guess it's good that he's that he's met a girl technically. Like that's the upside to this. But so if Dexter and Angela don't work out, then maybe Harrison and Audrey will. But we'll see about that. Maybe they went a little fast with that relationship, so we'll see how they slow things down. So, so pushing on. So we have, of course, uh, Dexter trying to figure out who is the person who could have possibly figured out that Jim was Dexter Morgan. And since Molly's the outsider here, the podcaster, he's like, must have been her somehow. And so Dexter goes and starts listening to Molly's podcast to find out that she is to cover the Bay Harbor Butcher. And so we have Dexter listening to this 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 podcast about the Bay Harbor Butcher, and he's like, "Oh, the good old days." And so it seems that Molly is to figure out that Dokes was to be on certain special assignments while these Bay Harbor Butcher murders were to have supposedly happened, and that it's possible that Dokes should have possibly been cleared from this, but like basically Miami was too quick to just seal this case and call Dokes a murderer. And so Molly is still thinking that the murderer is still out there somewhere. And so immediately Dexter's like, oh yeah, she's after me. Like she knows. So now Dexter is going off to try to find where Molly is. And so Molly is going to talk to Kurt, even though Angela is to tell her like, hey, like don't don't go into this Kurt thing. And Molly's like, well, yeah, like don't go into like the biggest case of my life. Yeah, don't kind of poke around anywhere and try to solve anything. So Molly goes on and talks to Kurt in this diner, and so the more and more she talks to him, the more he's starting to say it's like, well, like I lied about this, and maybe I didn't say, maybe I wasn't right about this, maybe I wasn't right about. So we find out that Kurt is like consistently lying to her, and then we have Dexter that comes in on their whole conversation after their whole conversation is done. And so Molly was recording all this. So Dexter is to take her phone while Molly isn't looking and listens to this recording. And so Kurt and Molly are going off to Kurt's place, his little runaway love shack, weird, goofy thing. So we have Dexter kind of listening to this recording that Molly made. And so Kurt is consistently skirting around things and then eventually telling Molly, it's like, well, hey, between you and me, like, Matt had came to me and like he was drunk, of course, and like he was asking me for things, and like I just took him to like to hide out for a while at this one place. Like, hey, if you want to come with me, you can say hi to Matt, and like all this will be resolved. And Somali's like, good, great, let's go there, let's see Matt, because I don't think he's there. So Molly goes with Kurt to this place, this hide away from home. This hideout away from home, I mean. So Molly starts following Kurt into this place with this door, and Kurt's knocking on this door, saying that Matt's like, yeah, he probably has his headphones on, he's probably like in the shower, he's probably farting the national anthem, I don't know. So very unreliable, this Matt. So, man, are they throwing this character under the bus. Man, whoever the actual actor of this guy was, but yeah, so, I think for Harrison, like, I think I completely forgot about the whole, like, Zach part, where, like, they were talking about, like, their wrestling match, and Harrison was like, yeah, we'll go get him, and then he ends up bumping into Audrey. I don't know if I said that or not, but I covered it now. So, because it really means nothing, but whatever. So, Kurt is, of course, taking Molly to this place, and Dexter is to follow them, and he's like, I don't know about this, like I don't know how I feel about Kurt anymore because I've been eating too many tuna sandwiches, saying that I'm rusty and I don't know what I'm doing now. So Dexter is to go and do the frisbee move from the Gator episode. And so Dexter goes in and says, like, well, hey, Kurt, like, yeah, like, I thought there was some rando person at your place, so I just wanted to check things out because I'm a nosy neighbor. Hey, yeah, what are you guys here for? And Kurt's like, well, like, Molly wanted to see if, like, Matt's in here, and because I told him that Matt was here, and so, oh yeah, let's go and check that out. So Dexter like opens this door and is to find like the door is locked a certain way and that there's cameras in the room, and Dexter's like, oh yeah, let's go into the bathroom and let's see like if Matt's in here. Oh no, doesn't look like it's in here. Kurt. Kurt. Murderer. Kidnapper? Leaving bodies in your wake? Kurt? Because I know there was something up with you, but now we sealed the deal on that. So Dexter goes on and is to like Curtis to try to like vamoose these people out of here. It's like, well, yeah, I guess Matt isn't here, so I guess we should all leave. And so it's like, well, where is he heading to next? Nobody knows. Kurt probably does. So, because Kurt is saying, it's like, well, hey, like, everything will be resolved if you come to me to this place, because no one's gonna care if this girl goes missing, so Kurt needs his runaway. So, but he's not gonna get it this time around. So Now, Molly and Dexter are leaving this place, and Kurt's like, well, hey, like, between us three, like, don't tell anybody this story. And Dexter's like, sure do, you murderer. You. Oh, no, wait. You, murderer. You, Kurt. You don't be hanging around my son, or you're gonna be hitting you, sonny boy. Anyway, so Dexter goes and takes Molly and drives her away from this place. And Molly's like, well, you know what? Like, I think I'm much more sure of you, Dexter, and I'm a little bit worried about Kurt. Like, I'm kind of worried what, like, is going on with Kurt. He seems to be an unsavory kind of fellow. And so Dexter's like, yeah, like, I win you over, but Kurt, that guy, yeah, he's something else, isn't he? Isn't he, Molly? Yeah, go after the murderer, because I'm the good guy. I haven't killed anybody in how many days? So, so Dexter is going and taking Molly off to this one location, but then he realizes that the wrestling match, and he's like, oh crap. So Dexter goes off to see Harrison wrestle, and like he's up first. Kurt is going on and like basically being the assistant coach and of this team. And Dexter's like, why is Kurt like being on that side of the like, why can't I be over there and kind of cheering on my son? And I think the waitress that's at the bar is next to Tess, is next to Dexter. She's like, well, he's technically a booster, and like he's put a lot of money in this school, so like they just kind of let him like get away with murder. Yeah, they probably do. Where are the bodies? So Dexter is going on and watching as Harrison is going up. And so Logan's like, hey man, this guy went to state. So like if you can just make it through this match, don't try to do anything, just survive. Like I will be happy with that. So Kurt is like, no, get angry, yeah, like motivating Harrison in a weird, goofy way. So we seem to have Harrison doing really well here, like surprisingly well, to the point of uh, the other wrestler kind of elbows freaking Harrison and kind of hits him in the eye. And it's like, hey, that's an illegal move. It's like, yeah, whatever. So we eventually go on, and Harrison is doing so well in this match that he now has, of course, this other kid in this arm submission. I don't know what it's called. Like, I've seen quite a few of amateur stuff, but like, I don't know what this weird submission is. Like it might be like a arm bar of some kind. I don't know. It seems kind of weird. Like I haven't seen a submission like that happen very often, or I haven't seen much of submission work as far as like wrestling goes. Usually, it's a pin is where I normally would see things. Um, what is this, like UFC style something? What's going on here? Anyways, we have the other guy tap, and so the match is over. Harrison is to win, but Harrison is to get that whole like motivation from Kurt saying like, yeah, get that a-hole, get him, get angry, and so Harrison all of a sudden is looking at his dad, and then Harrison goes and breaks this guy's arm, and that all of a sudden gets like people out of the bleachers and like 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 feels like some people are coming out swinging, and they're like, oh hey wait whoa, and so Kurt is kind of comforting Harrison, like hugging him, and like, hey, like you get him next time, and like and kind of comforting him, and like Dexter's like, you know what, Kurt, that's freaking enough, and so he kind of shoves Kurt, and Kurt's like what, like. And it's like, man, are these guys gonna duke it out like in some episode? Like, are they gonna come to blows? man, I want to see what happens in the following episodes. Just like somebody's gonna get punched in the face here. We'll see what happens between the two of them, because Kurt probably wants to kill Dexter anyways because of that whole ordeal. So Harrison is getting his gear on, and so Dexter's like, well, hey, what did Kurt tell you? And so Harrison starts walking off and getting out of here. And so Dexter's like, well, hey, like let's talk about this. But all of a sudden Angela's calling. Because Angela had gone off with Teddy onto these caves, and she went further and further into this caves. I'm like, what is this going to be, like The Descent at some point? Are we going to have vampires popping out? I'm like, ah! And so, like, I was waiting for something weirdly to happen here. Kind of like that whole, that whole Kurt and Winnie moment where all of a sudden, like, the boyfriend swerves everything. It's like, ah! Like, I was waiting for, like, something to happen there, but it didn't. So, now, Angela is going and finding these small rocks as if somebody was trying to bury something. And so they go further and further in this cave, and I thought there was some vampire descent thing happening here. I was like, you ever seen the movie Descent? You know what I'm talking about, but that wasn't a scary movie, but it was just like, huh? Like vampires in a cave? What is this movie? So we have Angela going and kind of finding this one spot where they end up finding a body after all, but it's not Matt's. It ends up being a person named Iris. And like, who the heck is Iris? So immediately the one thing that I want to think it is, so that way you can have some easy attachment to Kurt. I'm hoping that this is actually Kurt's wife. And I'm hoping that that is what it is, because I want it to be the fact that Iris was the first person that Kurt killed, and that started this whole string of all these murders. That would be pretty interesting. But I think with Angela getting so emotional by the end of this episode, I'm assuming, and plus also when she immediately saw the necklace, she knew who this was. She knew it was some girl named Iris, that she's like, like, I need to go and call Dexter immediately, because I'm losing my So, Angela's calling Dexter and saying, hey, Jim, I don't need Jim right now. I need Dexter Morgan. Because Dexter Morgan is going to CSI figure out what's going on here. And I hope that they take the whole next episode and viciously focus on this. Make a whole episode about this. I don't care that there's only 10 episodes left in this season. Make this the whole episode. I don't care about any slivers of stories or whatever. No. This Dexter and Angela thing better be the focus or I'm going to be ticked. I don't want this to be something that they wrap up in the last 10 minutes of the next episode. No. But yeah, like we'll get here where Dexter is to go and help Angela with this, and then Angela will just be like, okay, like, I think we can move on after like what you had done here. And maybe Angela will be like, it sounds weird to say, but like people might understand what I'm going here. I'm kind of hoping that Angela will basically become Deb. And that sounds weird, but hear me out. Like, I'm hoping that Angela will probably go to Dexter for things and just kind of bounce stuff off of him, like Deb used to do in the show. Like, I'm hoping that it becomes that, where like maybe Dexter is going to help out on cases like on the sly and just like, hey, here, but I'm not involved. I'm just some guy named Jim. But hey, like, you should probably go and look over there. I'm wondering if that's going to be that. Maybe that will be a really interesting show. And that'll also have Angela trust Dexter again, because it feels like Angela has to trust Dexter now. Or so than a guy named Jim. So, because he's a CSI guy, like, I don't know what it's going to do with blood spatter, because that's Dexter's expertise. So, I'm not really sure what Dexter is going to really need to do here, but, like, there's kind of something kind of unsolved here, so we'll figure that out. If there's anything that I didn't say here, like, really, I just kind of wanted to not say every little bit of this episode, but because there's a lot of dialogue and I didn't want to go and thumb through every bit of dialogue. There's something that I forgot about that's bound to happen. But I'm also just going to get the heck out of here so I can call this one a day for this one. Try to get this out as quickly as possible. So I can say I can enjoy this episode, but I felt that it was also an arduous process to watch. I'm getting sick of these, like, we're reviewing content in the show more than once. Stop that. It's so, like, we're going over, like, Bay Harbor Butcher more than once. We're going over, like, anything that's to be going on in the past, where you just keep bringing it up. Come on. Let's go into what's going on currently in Dexter. Stop bringing up every, like, are you trying to reach a new audience here? Because you have a crap ton of loyal people. Did no one, like, go back and rewatch any of these episodes? I don't know. Like, people, like, having to be reminded who the Bay Harbor Butcher killer was? I don't care. Well, let's focus on today. Let's focus on newer killers instead of, like, reflecting on, like, it feels like they just desperately need, like, some time to kill in this episode because they don't have a story in this show. That's what it feels like this reflection is consistently. I'm hoping in the next season they stop all this reflection crap and just get on to the show. Put together a better show is what I really want. Like, come on. Stop all this, like, hey, let's reflect on some other season killer. No, that's not. So, I'm happy when they bring people back. Like, Angel's like, ooh, yeah, but, like, now they're... Anyways, I'm gonna get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.